Hello everyone. Today I have the huge pleasure of meeting and presenting to you the wonderful author Bronwyn Leroux. Bronwyn is a sci-fi fantasy author who may or may not include romance in her novels. She lives near Denver, Colorado. She enjoys playing tennis and gardening, and she loves her accounting day job and sometimes struggles to juggle between that and writing. In fact, Bronwyn has way too many interests to list and often feels like a juggler at a fair, with her husband standing on the sidelines telling her to put something down before she drops everything. I love that description. Hello, Bronwyn. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a huge pleasure to meet you and to have you here.
Hey, Angelina. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's delightful meeting you.
It is, you as well. I think we've been following each other on social media for a little while, haven't we? Yeah. So it's lovely to finally meet you. That's brilliant.
You too.
Right. Okay. So the reason we're talking today on the podcast is we want to talk about love and what your thoughts and beliefs are around love and why you sometimes put romance in your stories and sometimes not. But I have read some of your books and there are always love in them in some form or another.
Yes. The Destiny series, the first set of books I did, that is first love, because we all know there are different kinds of love. There's family love that we start out with, and then we have platonic love. We find friends, that we have deep and meaningful relationships, not necessarily sexual, but, good relationships with them. And, those are the kind of friends that we trust and lean on. And then there's first love. I think everyone remembers their first love.
True.
And then, of course, after that comes, romantic love, which could also be first love. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. So my books, I like to focus on first love because I think it's important that people realize that love isn't necessarily something where people will just, you just fall in love. Yes, I believe in instant attraction to someone, but I believe if you're going to build a lasting relationship, there needs to be more than just the physical side. You need to get to know the person. You need to, know them as a person. And I think that leads to a more meaningful kind of love. And then, of course, finally, there's covenant love, where it's a choice. Right. You're going to choose to love that person, even if they annoy you, or even if they leave the teeth, cap off the toothpaste or whatever. And, and I think that is the one that, ends up in, I believe that's the one that ends up in marriage.
Right.
And obviously, that's not going to be something, you're not going to choose to stay in a relationship if there's, adultery or abuse or something extreme like that. But for the most part, covenant love means a choice, and you're going to choose to stay in that relationship, and you're going to work at it, because love doesn't come easy. It's something you have to work at. So
true.
Sorry, answer there.
No, very wise words, I think. Very wise words, because I think we do live in a world today where people are impatient and where it's a throwaway society, isn't it, in almost every respect, including relationships. Yes. Don't you agree? And I feel that sometimes there's such a quick throwaway of a relationship when things get difficult, rather than, as you say, choosing to stay because it takes work to work through it. And it's interesting to me that we often are happy or more willing to do that with friendships than we are with love relationships, romantic relationships, don't you think?
Yes, I think that's very true. In fact, it's something that has come up in my relationship. Often my husband will say, well, you treat your friends better than you treat me. And you have to take it's true. I have to take a step back and say, oh my goodness, I can't behave like this, because you do, when someone's been in your life for a long time and you love them, you do tend to take certain liberties you wouldn't take with other people, and you can take things for granted that you shouldn't. So it's good to make sure you're paying attention attention, because I think when you stop paying attention, that's when problems start. The other person could feel that they're not appreciated, or that they're not as important in your life as they should be. So yes, I do believe, there's a lot of people, a disposable society.
Right.
And I think there's also a lot of people who think they're in love with the idea of being in love.
True.
They don't really understand that love isn't just like this, ooh, la la, happy feeling. We're all going to be all like sunshine and roses. It's like, no, love is hard work. If you want to have a deep, meaningful relationship, it requires work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And do you feel that your characters in your books, the ones where you are writing about love, reflect that?
Yes, I do. The Destiny series, which has love in it, is first love, they're getting to know each other. And of course, because it's young adult, we have the whole backwards and forwards 20 times, which is kind of annoying for older readers. But that is how it happens. Well, I don't know. That was my experience. I mean, it may not be that way for everybody. But when you get to know someone, it's like, does he like me? Does she like me? How do I approach them? How do I ask them on a first date? Backwards and forward. But getting to know each other. And then once you get past that getting to know each other, then it's like choosing, well, these are the faults this person has. And yes, this is how I'm going to deal with them. It's not taking a stance of saying, well, you have to change. It's a matter of saying, this is how the person is. And obviously there's some things where you're going to discuss issues you have with them. So communication is important to love, I feel. And I feel my characters portray that in the books. They confront each other about certain things. And, it's good. It keeps the relationship, the communication lines open. If the communication lines are open, it allows the lines to be open to other areas, intimacy or confrontation, which I also believe is important. In a relationship, people think love is only good if you don't fight. And I don't believe that. No. I think, if you're going to have a good relationship, you're probably going to have a good few fights. I think the problem comes when people don't fight fair. We have to learn how to fight right. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a good fight clears the air.
Yes, it does.
Doesn't it?
Does. So,
yeah.
Yes, but we have a few of those too in the books.
Well, of course, because, it wouldn't be real. The book life wouldn't be real without it. And as you said, also, people are flawed. We're all flawed.
Yes, we are.
And yet when we fall in love with someone, it's like we don't see those flaws and we don't believe that person has any flaws, at least for the beginning part of the falling in love bit. Right? Yes, they're somewhere on a pedestal and they're perfect.
Yes, absolutely. And then as we get to know them better, it's like, oh, they're not really on that pedestal anymore. They do have a few things that are annoying.
Yes, exactly. And you're right. I think it is that sort of contract that you make with yourself in a way. Because I also feel that because we live in the society at the moment that we do, love often feels like an external thing.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, because I think a lot of people, I know, this may be slightly parallel to your question, but I'll get to answering it. But I think some people get confused between love and lust.
Right.
And I think the difference is knowing what the difference is. Are you giving in the relationship, which is love, or are you taking, which is lust?
Right.
So I think it's important to identify that, because until you do, you can't progress further. I think with lust, it's like, they're all fine and everything's hunky-dory until 5 minutes later, or like a year later or whatever it is, you realize they've got faults, and then it's like, bye-bye, sayonara, see you later.
Yeah.
So does that answer the question?
It does, yes. I think it absolutely does, because, as I said, what I come across sometimes is people seeing love on an external level, and I think that equates to lust more, doesn't it?
Yes.
Where it's a looking thing, it's the visual attraction, it's the sensual attraction. And I'm not saying that's wrong, because of course that is part of it, isn't it? But I feel that people don't look inside enough necessarily.
Yeah, and then when they do, then that's when they start seeing things they don't like. And, then they have to decide how to come to terms with that. And I think that's maybe a part of the relationship where a lot of people decide that it isn't worth continuing. So that's my opinion. I could be totally wrong, but I think
you're right.
People look at the external.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And I also think that one of the reasons is because I find, and you may disagree, I don't know, but I find that often people who are close to us, so for example, a romance relationship, shows us things about ourselves. It's a kind of mirror back. And I think that sometimes it's too uncomfortable. You don't want to look at that for yourself. And so it's an easier option to blame the other person and leave.
Yes, right, because none of us want to take responsibility for our own actions.
Right.
And when someone we're in a relationship with shows up something in our character that is flawed, we don't like it.
No.
I mean, we don't like to be told we're wrong. We all want to be right, don't we?
Exactly. And it's uncomfortable.
So, yeah.
It's uncomfortable, because I think you can't, I don't know, maybe you agree with me, you can't have love without vulnerability, without looking for the truth.
Yeah, I think I agree with that statement. I think as you grow in your relationship, there are growing pains, because you start realizing some things and they may be uncomfortable. But if you can come to terms with them and be a big enough person to accept them, your relationship can grow.
Right.
Yeah.
But we live in a kind of society where that doesn't seem to be happening.
People don't really seem to be wanting to do too much work. It's like, oh, well, this isn't working. It's just like
But I think people do themselves a disservice because they think they're working on the marriage or the relationship, when in fact I think they're working on themselves.
Yes, that's true. And I think to have a good long-term relationship, you do need to work on yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't say my spouse is the problem. Yes, there are certain circumstances where the spouse may be the problem because of some kind of extreme behavior. But then that's when you need to listen to the counsel of others, external people who may say, this person is not treating you very well, or, whatever it is. But, I agree. For the most part, you want to be working on yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said earlier about abusive relationships. And I think you kind of alluded to that now, didn't you? Because I think there are those abusive relationships and they sometimes are underground. There's a breaking down of the self-esteem, of the confidence, and it's insidious. It happens at a very subtle level sometimes. But I think... Yeah, but I do think the person who receives that feels it. They know it, even though they don't want to know it necessarily. But I think, and that is another way of refusing to look at yourself, refusing to work on yourself. That's what I think.
Yeah. And I think, it's very difficult. I mean, for people in abusive relationships, I have no way of knowing what those people might feel, but I just, I know from what I've read that, in a lot of those kind of relationships, because there is a breakdown of their own self-esteem and also because of the partner, sometimes they get isolated from other people.
Right.
And then they actually don't have anyone that they can turn to. And I still think that deep down, even though they may say he's never going to do this again, or sometimes it could even be she's never going to do this again. Sometimes they know deep down, that doesn't matter, it's still going to happen. And it's become a codependent relationship, and they need to be really strong to be able to get out of that. So, and working on yourself, I think when your self-esteem is that low, that takes a huge amount of grit internally. It takes guts to do that.
For sure.
To face up to it and do something about it.
Yeah, for sure. And so do you think that is one of the reasons why reading romance is so important to so many people? Because it's an escape to a happy ending, no matter what your life might look like.
I totally agree with that. I love romance stories. I think, we all like the happily ever after. It doesn't necessarily mean because someone writes romance, you're going to get a happily ever after. But, that's the typical expectation of the reader. That's what I expect when I read romance. And I think it's important for people because we grow up with love from the time we're young with our family to getting friendships as we get older to getting in a relationship.
Right.
And then, as we get older, even we have children and grandchildren. Right. So love is always in our life, whether we want it or not. Romantic love is obviously what progresses things forward and creates the next generation. And I think it's important to see that, even though your own life may not be ideal, there is hope out there. There are options for, it's like, Well, I mean, sometimes I've read romance novels and I've picked up things. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That character approached the problem in this way.
Right.
And I thought, well, maybe if I did that, that might help certain things.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't mean that, you can't learn from a romance novel. Probably you aren't going to. Probably you're just going to enjoy the story and eat it up in like a day or two or a few hours, depending how fast you read. But yeah, I think romance novels are important because it's the light at the end of the tunnel for some people.
Oh, for sure. And it's changed so much. I'm so aware of the fact that in pre-Jane Austen times, for example, romance was written for women, by women, about women's lives. And it's no longer the case. There's a lot of men who write romance. Some still under female pen names, but they are nonetheless writing romance. And they are reading it as well. A lot of males are reading romance. And so I think the role and the purpose of romance has changed. Would you agree?
I would agree with that assessment. Back in, Jane Austen's day, it was pretty much the men would do what they did and the women were kind of left to cope with the aftermath, if you want to put it that way.
Right.
Whereas today's society is very different. And I think it's also men, are way more in touch with their emotions, perhaps, than they were in Jane Austen's day.
Right.
And men also want to be happy. They want to know that there is a better way, there is something, a relationship that could be better. I think also it's important to realize, you can't mix fiction and fact. Like, you can't make your romance work in the real world if it's not the right person, if they're not willing to be as committed as you are.
Right.
I definitely think there's been a shift. I don't think there's any shame anymore in men admitting, I want to read a romance novel. I don't know that I know any who read any, but then of course I don't know any people who read a lot. Most of the people men that I know who read nonfiction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose, we all have our thing, don't we? Our thing that we love. But yes, I think you're right. I know quite a few very male men around me who read not necessarily romance, but they talk about the intimacy of a good relationship. And that has shocked me when I first heard it because, as I said, it was I work in theatre and have done for many, many years. And so many of my fellow actors and singers and friends are gay, and you would expect them to be okay with that. They're far more open about their emotions normally and about the fact that they enjoy intimacy. But when it is straight guys and they're talking about needing intimacy, that was very interesting to me. But I think the other way in which romance has changed a lot, and I don't know if you agree with me about this, is that I see more and more really, really strong women in romance. In the past, romances seemed to sort of have heroines who were a little bit, how shall I say, vulnerable and being rescued.
The damsel in distress.
Right, the damsel in distress type thing. But it's no longer the case, or not very much so. I read more and more romance novels where the women are strong. Really strong characters. And I think that that's a wonderful kind of role model in a way for younger girls who read these things.
Yes, I do agree with that. I agree with that statement too. I'm sounding like a yes monkey this morning, but I do agree with that. I think it's also a response to the fact that the female characters have become so much stronger. It's also been a response to the world around us. Because women, back in Jane Austen's day, we were in the background. The woman was required to pretty much sit at home and take care of the children. If she was fortunate enough, she'd have the governess to teach them and the cooks and the household to run. But pretty much the woman's role was in the home. Whereas now women are actually out in the workplace and, making decisions. And I think it's kind of like been a corresponding increase. They don't want to see a heroine who is a damsel in distress anymore. They want to see a woman going in and taking charge of her own life and doing her own thing and making her own decisions. And I think that is important for young women to realize that I do have a right to choose someone who makes me happy. I do have a right to choose someone who's who's going to treat me like I am precious and special, and, you know, not like the dish rag or, you know, the doormat. And I do believe the damsel in distress doesn't necessarily mean she was loved. It just meant that she was rescued, and doesn't necessarily mean anything else about her. No, it just means, you know, she didn't really have much of a say. I think for young women, it's important to know they can make decisions. They should be making decisions about their life partner.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think it is really important, especially in certain cultures. There are still cultures in this 21st century that we're in where women are not respected, where they are not made to feel that they have a right to be themselves and to have a life of their own. And to me, that is such almost a source of distress.
Yeah.
Because every person, I feel, is special, is worth it, is entitled to love. But I also feel exactly what you said. It's not only external love. It's the love inside you. And I think when people, and especially younger women, understand that it's perfectly normal for them to have a life of their own, to go after what they want, be it a career, money, the love that they want, all of those things are actually internal, even though it looks like it's external, right?
Yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, it is. You know, a lot of those things are internal. You know, what our deepest needs and desires are. We know what those are. We won't necessarily expose them to other people until we feel safe enough to do so.
Right.
But, you know, I think if you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't allow you to be who you are or who you would like to be, that probably isn't a relationship you want to be in.
Right. Exactly.
Long term.
Not long term, no, definitely. Not at all, actually. Yeah, no. It's a no. It's a no, that one. Yeah. Okay, well, we've come to the end of this wonderfully delightful interview. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. So I have just a few more questions for you. So the first question is, where can people find your books and where can they find you online?
Well, my books are available on Amazon. You can look up my name, just go to my author name, and you'll be able to find all the books there. I'm also available in the other major online retailers, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple. My website is bronwynleroux.com, so you can find me there. And then I'm also on social media, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, so then just the last question is this. What, at the end of your time, would you like your legacy to be in the world?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think I would like to know that at the end of the day, I would have done every day what it was that I was led to do that day. So whether it was go comfort a friend, give my husband a compliment, work on my day job and be excellent at that, or encourage people or entertain people with my writing, I would like to know that every day I've done what it was I was supposed to do in that day, so that by the time I pass away, I won't have regrets, that I'll be happy with the life that I've lived. And I'd like my legacy to be that people will feel that they've been touched in some way, that their lives have been improved somehow, even in like a little bit. I know that's kind of a grand goal, but you know, I believe as writers, you know, I think we have a responsibility to be able to speak positively into people's lives, and I would like to be able to do that, and hopefully be able to say that I was able to achieve that.
That's a wonderful, wonderful statement and a wonderful thing to aspire to. And I'm sure you're already doing it every day, and I'm sure you'll achieve it, darling. You really will. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Angelina. It's been delightful spending this time with you, and so happy. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and share your views and ask for mine.
Oh, darling, it's been my huge pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll speak again soon.